let's look at our first trigonometric equation. Let's take a look. Our first trigonometric equation is, let's say we have 3 cosine of 2 theta, 3 cosine 2 theta plus 5 cosine theta plus 2 is 0. All right, so the first thing I want you to notice is here you have a 2 theta, here you have a theta. That's going to be a challenge for you to solve. So the wonderful thing about what we are doing and what we discussed last time was there are things called identities, trigonometric identities, that allow you to convert from the cosine of 2 theta to the cosine of just theta. And those identities I actually have listed here. Before the show started, I wrote these down. So one of the things you'll notice is the cosine of 2 theta is equal to 3 different expressions. And the thing I'd like you to be able to see is because this original problem has cosine theta in it, you would wisely choose this second identity right here. You choose this second identity because this cosine 2 theta is written in terms of cosine squared theta here. You would not choose this identity because it has both cosine and sine in it. And you would not choose, even though this identity is indeed equal to cosine 2 theta, you want an identity that has exclusively cosine theta in it, just like your original problem. So that said, let's rewrite this cosine 2 theta as 2 cosine squared theta minus 1. All right, so I rewrote cosine 2 theta to be equal to that. All right, so now we're just going to finish the problem. Plus 5 cosine theta plus 2 is 0. All right, so now let's distribute. We get 6 cosine, just distributing, 6 cosine squared theta minus 3, I'm distributing that 3, plus 5 cosine theta plus 2 is 0. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to combine terms. We get 6 cosine squared theta minus, well, actually, let's make that plus 5 cosine theta, and let's we combine terms, that's minus 1 is 0. Okay, so now what we're going to do, let's try to factor this. Let's try to factor this. All right, so we factor this, we get 6 cosine theta and cosine theta, and now 2 terms multiplied together give you negative 1. Let's make that plus 1 minus 1, and I think if you check that, you see that you get the 5 cosine theta that we want, and that's equal to 0. So now what we have is we have 6 cosine theta minus 1, 6 cosine theta minus 1, that's equal to 0, and we also have this equal to 0. Cosine theta plus 1 is 0. All right. So now what we're going to do is this one's the easiest to solve for. Let's subtract the 1. Cosine theta is equal to negative 1. Cosine theta is equal to negative 1. And then the thing that you'll discover that the cosine theta is equal to negative 1, the answer to that is theta is equal to 270. Theta is equal to 270. Cosine theta, cosine theta is negative 1. Forgive me, that's 180. Sorry about that. Cosine theta is equal to negative 1 is 180. And we get that from your understanding of the cosine curve. All right, so this is your cosine curve, like so. All right, that's your cosine curve. This gives you the cosine everywhere between 0 and 2 pi. Okay, so that's pi. And the cosine of what angle? The cosine of what angle is negative 1? You get that 180 degrees. all right, or pi, or pi, same thing. All right, so now here you get 6 cosine theta is 1. Excuse me. You get cosine theta is 1/6. Now you're going to need a calculator for that. That you're going to need a calculator for. And I have my calculator, fortunately. And let's see what we got here. Let's see what we have here. All right, so cosine theta, arc cosine of 1/6. Let's clear this out. So you go, let's make sure we're in the proper mode. We're in the degree mode. Great. So we go arc cosine of 1 divided by, you can't see that, arc cosine of 1 divided by 6. And you get 80.4. So what you're going to do there is acknowledge where cosine is positive. Cosine is positive here and here. Our reference angle is 80.4. 80.4. So in addition to your answer being equal to 180, your answer is also equal to 80.4. 80.4. And then this from here to here is 80.4. But this all the way around is 360. So if you want that, all the way around, that's 360. But if you want not, okay, if this is 360, if you want to stop here, you have to take 360 minus that reference angle of 80.4. So let's do that. Subtract 360, and you get 279.6. All right, so the other answer is theta is 279.6. So 3 answers for that particular problem. 3 answers for that particular problem. All right, so we want you to call in. If you don't want to study trigonometric equations, you call in and we'll practice whatever you want to practice. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going. I told you I wanted to talk about trigonometric equations, okay? And another thing I want to talk about is I would like to discuss, you know what I think I want to do? I think I want to show you other answers that might appear. I think we have time for that. Maybe what would happen if you did not see these particular answers. Let's do that. If you did not see these particular answers, okay, what a textbook might show is, again, we had cosine theta is equal to 1/6. All right, that was what we had. And then we had cosine theta is equal to -1. Okay, so again, what we told you already is an answer might be pi. So the textbook might show 3.14. See, that's a radian degree measure. So my point is, if you don't see these answers in degrees in a textbook, if you don't see 180, 80.4, or 279.6, what you might see is you might see these answers in radians. All right, so now let's do something. Let's go to mode. Let's change the mode on our calculator to a radian mode. I don't know if you can see that. All right, but that's a radian mode. All right, so I just changed it to the radian mode. Now let's do the same thing that we did, taking the arc cosine of 1 divided by 6, and you get, now it's in radians, so that's 1.4. So cosine is positive here and here. So that's 1.4, but it's a radian measure, and that's 1.4. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do the same thing that we did before. So one answer is 3.14. Okay, another answer would be 1.4. But see, that's a radian. Sorry, that's a radian measure. And the other measure, this is 6.28. This is 2 pi. 2 pi, which is equivalent to 6.28. So you take the 6.28, minus 1.4. Let's do that. So 6.28 minus 1.4, and you get 4.88. So these are other answers. These are other answers that 3.14, 1.4, and 4.88. Those are other answers that a textbook might show. It's just that these are in a different language as these. maybe, you know, if you had a translator, whatever I'm saying, a translator could repeat the same thing that I'm saying, but they could repeat it in another language. You know, so I think hello and buenos dias, I think good afternoon and buenos dias are the same statement, but they're in different languages. It's the same exact statement, but in different languages. And I'd liken what I've done here and here. I've written down the same answers in different languages. This is a degree language, 180 degrees, 80.4 degrees, 279.6 degrees. And that's the same thing as saying 3.14 radians or pi radians, 1.4 radians, and 4.88 radians.